Hey gardeners, my name is Devin Wallien and thank you for joining me here on Plant Vibrations. In this video, I want to go through a few of my favorite easy flowering plants for beginner gardeners. Now, my family and I have been in the horticulture business for over 50 years. We sell about 30 million plants annually to wholesalers and retailers across the United States. And so growing and selling plants for so long, so many different kinds of varieties of plants, we've come to really pinpoint which plants are great for producing wonderful flowers if you're just starting to garden for the very first time. So let's get into it. Now, I think most of us are familiar with Black-Eyed Susan. They're one of the most popular perennial plants in the garden. Just a reminder, a perennial is a plant that comes back every single year. They typically go dormant in the wintertime, and then as the warm spring weather comes back, they re-emerge from underneath the ground. And Black-Eyed Susans are one of the very best perennials for sun-drenched gardens. They handle a wide variety of different soils, but that being said, there's lots of different kinds of Black-Eyed Susans out there. So when you're shopping for a Black-Eyed Susan, you want to look for something that has some unique characteristics that will allow it to stand out to other Black-Eyed Susans you might see around your neighborhood. My favorite one in particular is one called the Minibeckia Flame. This hybrid has extra large flowers with two-tone petals that create a wonderful, colorful energy in the garden. They bloom their hearts out for weeks and weeks and weeks towards the end of summer, moving into fall. And as you can see, they have this wonderful coloration that looks sunny and summery, but also at the same time has a little bit of that auburn fall color as well. These guys have a really nice, dense and compact growth habit, and they don't get too tall, so they really require very little staking. This is a definite, easy to grow, high impact, long flowering, big blooms, wonderful plant for any beginner. These plants are also an absolute boon for all of our pollinator friends. And they're even easier because you actually can just leave them in the garden at the end of fall and allow them to overwinter in your garden naturally. And their seed heads will actually provide wonderful seeds for a lot of the birds that are overwintering in your area. That makes them even better in my book. So next up is one of my shade garden favorites. That would be Mophead hydrangeas from the Endless Summer series. There's a few different hydrangeas in the Endless Summer series, but I find that they are some of the very best performing hydrangeas because, so if you've ever been afraid of pruning your hydrangeas because you've heard, oh, if I cut my hydrangeas at the wrong time, I'll have no flowers. While that is the case for many other hydrangeas, they'll produce flowers on last year's growth as well as new growth that occurs during this garden season. That means you can pretty much cut them at any time and they're still going to produce flowers. That makes them very reliable and exceptionally easy. Now, as I was saying, these are a wonderful plant for the more shadier areas of the garden. I love growing them under trees. I love growing them at the eastern or northern sides of the home where it can be a little bit more challenging to add some color. And the Endless Summer series have a wide variety of different kinds of flower shapes. Right here we're looking at something called Summer Crush. It has these nice large rounded flowers that will come in shades of pinks and raspberries all the way till kind of like a purpley blue. Now that will depend on the pH of your soil, which if you have a more acidic soil, that means below 7 in the pH scale, you're going to have more of a purple or blue tone. If you have a more alkaline soil above 7, that's going to produce more pinkish, reddish, raspberry tones in your garden. And just like those Black-Eyed Susans, these are also a perennial, but these are a shrubby perennial, and they'll actually retain some growth above the soil all winter long. You can even leave those old flower heads on your plants in the wintertime, and they create a nice energetic interest in your garden in the wintertime when most everything else is barren. They're also exceptionally winter hardy. However, you do want to note that they can be a little bit thirsty plants, so if you do live where it's exceptionally hot, you will want to ensure that you're watering them quite regularly. All right, so next up would be geranium, colloquially known as geranium, but these are in fact technically a member of the Pelargonium genus. However, this is one of my favorite plants for adding large swaths of color on your patios, on your decks, in containers, window boxes, hanging baskets, or anywhere else that you just want to have a lot of colorful impact. This is the classic plant that you'll find in window boxes across the fronts of homes in Switzerland and Austria. It's also one of the favorites that you'll find growing outside in containers outside of homes in places like Colombia and Mexico. And the reason is because they're such wonderful performers. However, there are lots of different geranium out there. So when you're actually looking for geranium, either online or at a garden center, you want to ensure that the plants aren't only covered with lots of flowers while they're blooming, but that they also have lots of flower buds on the way at the same time. That's going to allow it to continually produce more and more color throughout the months. Now, different from those black-eyed Susans and those hydrangeas, these are a tender perennial, which if you live in a cold weather region like I do in Zone 6B in eastern Pennsylvania, I treat these as an annual, which means I'll grow them for the summertime, and then at the end of the summertime, I'll just add them to my compost pile. You can also overwinter them, which is I would say an intermediate gardener's task, which if you are interested in how to do that, you can check the video up there. Or if you live somewhere like Southern California, where my little sister does, she can actually grow these as an outdoor plant all year round, and they will continue to produce beautiful growth in her garden 12 months out of the year. I always like to grow the hybrid geraniums, which are hybrids containing beautiful flowers that also have this nice ornate lobed foliage. It creates a really full kind of look in your eyes and in your garden. So even when your plants may not be totally full of flowers, they still have gorgeous foliage to boot. These plants are very versatile, growing in as little as just morning sunlight, but handling all the way to a full day's sun. These will easily provide you beautiful, colorful flowers from the early summertime all the way until your first frost. And while you can definitely grow them in your flower beds and along your borders, I do love growing them in containers, particularly when you pair them with other plants, such as coleus, to create a really nice double effect. When we're creating mixed planters like this, we always have three things in mind. The old saying is a thriller, a filler, and a spiller. So in this case, the thriller would be the beautiful geranium flowers, the filler would be the foliage of the geranium, and the spiller, of course, would be this coleus that flows over the edge. Now, another absolute favorite perennial of mine would be the daylily. Daylilies are one of the easiest plants to grow for everyone in the country because they handle such a wide range of conditions. They're exceptionally winter hardy. They can handle like -30 degrees, but they can also handle very hot temperatures as well. So they really do well in gardens all the way to the Canadian border, pretty much down almost to Miami. I love these plants because they're one of the very first signs of growth in the early springtime, often producing their foliage in as early as the middle of March. Then they'll start to produce these beautiful flowers in the summertime. Now, there's tons of different daylilies out there. Don't settle for those common yellow ones. When you're choosing your daylilies, you want to look for a daylily that may have something in its description as a reblooming daylily, which means that they are able to continually bloom throughout the summertime. A lot of those common ones will simply bloom for about 2 weeks or so, and then they'll just produce this foliage, which is quite nice. But if there are other daylilies out there that provide that beautiful foliage and flowers for an even longer time, those are the ones you want to get. I tend to go for the ones that are multicolored as well, because that just creates even more interest in the garden. Now, do note that these are very palatable to the deer, so deer are a problem in your area. I recommend spraying them with a deer repellent spray about once a month just to keep the deer away. And lastly is the Canna Lily. These add some of the coolest tropical flair to anywhere in your garden. I love to plant them both in the ground and in containers on your porches and patio. They add this wonderful tropical energy wherever you plant them, and they're such a reliable, easy to grow plant. And when you pick the right varieties, you can have these gorgeous tropical flowers pretty much all summer long in tons of different shades, from your yellows, your wonderful pinks, and gorgeous reds. You can even find some cannas in a nice burgundy toned foliage, which creates a wonderful contrast. These are a very versatile plant as well. They do well if you tend to overwater your plants. They also do well if you tend to underwater your plants. They're just super resilient. Now, these are also a tender perennial, which means that you will require overwintering them. You can catch a short little video right here to see exactly how to overwinter them if that is part of your gardening plan. And they are so spectacular that it is worth the little extra effort to bring them back every single year. My absolute favorite way of growing these is to grow about 5 or 6 of them kind of in a row along the edges of your deck. You can kind of create this wonderful low maintenance privacy screen on the sides of your deck with really no more effort than simply getting them into a container of soil and giving them water regularly. These are an absolute top choice for beginner gardeners looking to grow something unique, spectacular, and full of colorful flowers. Well, gardeners, I hope you enjoyed this short video showcasing some of my favorite plants to create wonderful flowers if you're a beginner gardener. Please consider subscribing to our channel. We're bringing new plant-related content every single week. And don't forget to like this video if you did enjoy it. Anyways, thank you guys for joining me here on Plant Vibrations. I'll catch you real soon. Ciao.